first thing you'll be wanting to do is set up your views accordingly. There are multiple views in the helicopter. You've got behind views, you've got cockpit views, and importantly, if you press the cockpit view multiple times, it toggles the cockpit on and off, which gives you better visibility. There's also the multiple views to cycle through, and they do come in handy sometimes, but really the most important thing is to bind the key. A nice easy key, I use left alt because I use the mouse and keyboard, and I use that to toggle the cockpit view. And although you might think, hey, no cockpit, that's better, you don't always want to fly without the cockpit, because the cockpit gives you better spatial awareness and a very slightly wider field of view. I've also got the behind view bound to the spacebar. In addition to being able to change your views, you're going to also want to be able to look around in first person mode in the cockpit. It's very good for identifying targets when you're not actually flying in that direction, but it takes a wee bit of getting used to it because it's quite disorientating, and it also cuts off your flight controls. So while you're moving around, the chopper is taking no input. It's very important to be able to use this because you might be flying off to one side, but you'll be looking for targets coming from a direction where you're expecting them from. So get a wee bit of practice and get used to that as well, because it's very important for awareness to be able to do it.
Imagine life is perfect and everything works out.
This is the basic movement section of the video, when I'll show you the various inputs available to you. I'll show you why the helicopter travels in the directions that it does, why it moves like it does. It's very important to understand how to best use your controls to make the helicopter do what you want. So if you don't get the basics right, you're never going to be able to fly it properly. So the way I like to look at this in Battlefield 2 is, if you can imagine, there's a great big bloody arrow pointing out the top of the helicopter, and when you accelerate, that is the direction the helicopter will generally move in. So right now, helicopter it's on the carrier, it's parallel to the ground, so the arrow is going to be pointing straight up towards the sky. So if I am to accelerate, which I do using the W key in my case because I use the mouse and keyboard, that is the direction I'm going to be flying. I'll just be heading straight up in the direction of the arrow. So I'm just getting lots of altitude here. When I stop pressing the acceleration key, the chopper is just happy to hover there. You lose height at a rate of about 1 unit every couple of seconds. So you can quite happily hover there without too much hassle. If you need a little bit more height, you just apply a little bit more acceleration, or you just tap the key to keep it quite steady. Now I use the mouse and keyboard, so for me, mouse left rolls the chopper to the left, mouse right rolls the chopper to the right. Moving the mouse forwards pitches the chopper down, and mouse backwards pitches the chopper backwards. Now if you're not accelerating, it's not going to move a great deal, but like I said, if you remember the arrow concept, when I roll the chopper to the left, the arrow is now pointing to the left, so when you accelerate, it's going to move to the left. Likewise, when you move it backwards, the arrow is now pointing behind you, so that you're going to move backwards. So that's the controls you've got with your mouse. You've also got your rotate left and rotate right keys, which is, I think it's a rudder or whatever. I don't know the technical terms, it's a computer game, who cares. So here, rotating right and rotating left. And it just does it on the spot. If your chopper is parallel with the ground, there's more subtleties when it's not parallel with the ground, but that doesn't really matter for the moment. And as you can see, really, in isolation, all of these things are largely useless, because you resemble a flying brick. There's no dynamic movement. You're just ambling around, waiting to get shot out the sky by whatever. So it's when you combine these things that they really become of use. And when you combine them, you can do all kinds of great movements and fancy rolls and all that pish, and that is when you start to become useful as a chopper pilot. But you've got to know how to use them, and it takes a wee while to get used to the controls, but I'll go through how to funnel and how to perform the most basic and useful things that you need to be able to do to be a decent chopper pilot. Landing the helicopter is something you just get used to. Just a wee bit of practice should do it. all you do is fly over to where you want to land, make sure the bottom of the helicopter is parallel with whatever you're landing on, then hold your deceleration key until you touch down. That's all there is to it, really. Now it's very well flying around an empty server, but what I prefer to do is use a single player. The problem with the single player is a lot of the time the bots will get to the chopper before you do. So what you can do here, there's the bot in the chopper, just get in the chopper, hit F1, that'll switch you to the pilot's seat, then tell him to get out, and he will, because he's a mindless diddy and you paid money for this game, so it's only right, isn't it? Now the great thing about single player is it's got a bunch of moving stuff that doesn't shoot back. It's like a British colonial invasion in the 19th century or something like that. So all you do is park on the roof, there's a pair of Doc Martens to my left, and just touch down, and you need to get the chopper right over the edge so the nose is over the edge, otherwise the TV will hit the ground because it comes out lower down on the chopper. So I'm just parking it there, that looks lovely, and I'm just switching between the pilot and gunner seat using F1 and F2. There we go, I'll just fire a TV at that car. Boom, happy days. So you can just sit up here and it's a nice view, you can lord it over the plebs. There's an APC, so I'm just turning the chopper to face it, roughly, and then firing the TV at it. And you'll notice there that it doesn't go exactly where you click sometimes, but I'll go into that later. So this is just a handy wee thing to get used to and hit some stuff that's moving. Look, there's a wee guy down there. It's a dead wee guy. And before I forget, when you're in the gunner's view, it's right mouse button to enter the TV view. So just have a play around with that and get used to the controls and stuff. The most important thing you've got to do when you're in a helicopter is keep it moving. Honestly, it's okay to hover in very select circumstances, but you only learn these circumstances after you've got a bit of experience. The problem with hovering in situations like this is you can't see. You can see in front of you, but you can't see to your right, can't see to your left, and you can't see behind you. And when you're looking in these directions, you can't see what's in front of you. And this will get you killed very, very quickly. So what some people advise to do is so-called maintaining a diameter, which basically means keep away from your target. But this is only so good. And a lot of people will advise you to do something like this, keep it moving. But this is a lot more difficult for a gunner to hit anything when you're doing this. And it also means you're stationary here, you're moving here, you're stationary here, you're moving there, you're stationary there. So when you're stationary and you're changing direction, it's very easy for someone to hit a stationary target. So you'll probably get about 3 anti-tank rockets up the arse. So it's not a very good idea. So what you want to do instead is you want to give the gunner a nice steady aim while keeping the chopper moving. And if you look at it here, this is like what gunships do. They revolve around the target while keeping the aim trained on the centre, and it's called funneling. So if you can imagine you're shooting the flag here, nice and easy. Look how easy it is to keep the aim on the flag there, but to someone on the ground you'll be hard to hit. And this is what it's all about. You want to make yourself hard to hit while giving your gunner a nice smooth aim, and that is it's the primary thing you got to learn in a helicopter, because if you can't do it then you're going to be useless. So I'll teach you how to funnel next. So for the sake of all the good gunners out there, don't fly like you're pissed out your head. Fly in a fashion that gives them a nice, smooth, even aim.
Just